And we're live. Welcome back to the LOOPcast. Today, I'm joined by Josh and Tinfoil Tom. Tom, thanks for taking the time to join the show.
Happy to be here. Don't mind being called tinfoil. Just don't accuse of my audiences of being small.
Well, it's good we got the boys back bopping on Friday.
Like, is he offended by the name Tom? I mean, because of you? I was like, where is he going with this?
Yeah, you never quite know with Tom. But we have a great show for you today. I think at this point, when I was thinking about what to do the show about, I've had a lot of conversations in my personal life of how the debate has aged. And we definitely did a Wednesday show about the breakdown immediately after the debate. But I think a lot of things have continued to be shown after the debate. So what comes to mind is there was kind of an instant declaration of Kamala Harris as the winner. Trump doesn't want to debate her again. But what I saw an interesting phenomenon online of people basically saying what Trump said is so outrageous, it can't be true. And then people looked it up and it turned out to be true. So I have a few of my favorites in that regard. First of them being abortion. So if you look here at a major moment of the debate was Trump going on offense on abortion. And he said, there's no restrictions. You can have abortion in the 9th month. And of course you get the ABC moderator saying that's not the case, that no state does this. No woman does this. And ABC themselves had to fact check their own article afterwards, saying Minnesota does not prohibit abortion based on how far along a woman is in pregnancy. So that was the first example that I saw. But there's plenty others. I don't know if you guys had any moments. But first, I'd like to say hello to everyone joining us live in the chat. What's up, guys? Thank you guys for joining. We are live Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. So thank you guys for tuning in. And also,
I really want to key on this point, though, because, there was Reason Magazine is a libertarian outlet. They're kind of left libertarian. They're certainly not pro-life in any way, obviously.
Right.
And one of the reporters there was a guy named Billy Binion, if I say his name right.
Beignet.
And he said, when I found out that Colorado essentially permits abortions up until somebody's water breaks, my reaction was, that can't be correct. But then he says, it's correct. Whatever your views on abortion, I struggle to understand how anyone supports this. If a baby is viable, how is that okay? I run into this so many times. Like I will bring this kind of thing up with my mom, who's more liberal, and I'll say this stuff and she goes, that's not true. That's a lie. That's not true. And you go out of your mind. You're like, what are you talking about? Of course it's true. You live in Minnesota. The governor here signed it into law. Like you don't even have to take my word for it. Like call up. And so Kristen Hawkins over at Students for Life, she had a bunch of people.
Oh, that was a great clip.
Planned Parenthood and say, hey, I'm at 31 weeks. I want to schedule abortion. They're like, yeah, sure. We can get you in a week from Friday. And it's like, wait a minute. It's obviously true. And it's one of those things where the left has become so radical that there's, and here's why the corruption of the media is so devastating and so horrible, because they don't call them out on it. In fact, they run cover for the Democrats, because when Trump said that, as you point out, the ABC reporters are like, well, that's not true. Fact check. It's like, it is true. And it's just like, how can you have a debate in a free society if the Democrats are allowed to support the most crazy and radical ideas and never get called out for it? That's not the only one.
Well, if I could, because this has been going on for a long time. In 2012, if you remember, Barack Obama, when he was a state senator, voted against legislation to protect babies born alive in Illinois. That's Jill Stanek. That's when she really came into the pro-life movement and everything, because she was a nurse who cuddled some of these babies who were born alive and she wasn't allowed to treat them, but she cuddled them so they felt warmth until they died. However, when I would talk to the media when Barack Obama was running, they would call me a liar and that I wasn't telling the truth.
Oh man, that must have been a jarring experience.
It was. I was just like, I would send them pictures from medical journals and they just would not believe me. But what Donald Trump doesn't get enough credit for, and because he hasn't been great on the life issue really this time around, So there's usually not a lot to praise, but this gives me a ton of hope, is that despite every time he brings this up, and he brings it up a lot about babies being born alive and being killed or left to die, every time he brings it up, the media slam him, the Democrats slam him, but he keeps on bringing it up. What I can only think of one other politician who would do that. Most would just fold, like, oh, I'm just going to be hit if I say this, so I'm going to stop saying it. And that's Chris Smith from New Jersey. Every other politician, as much, even ones that in your mind you're thinking they're a real pro-life hero, would stop saying it under such pressure. But Donald Trump hasn't. And he deserves a lot more credit for that from the pro-life movement.
And the even, Josh, 1 second before I could, but the even more extreme claim from Kamala Harris's sorority sister who fact-checked it was that no babies are killed after being born. There's no botched abortions where they end up dying. And Trump stuck on that. And then, of course, that got fact-checked later. It actually has happened 8 times in Minnesota because there was a time where there was mandatory reporting on those cases. So we know of 8 cases. And then what did Tim Walz do? He got rid of the reporting requirement. So now we don't know at this point. But we do absolutely know this has happened in Minnesota 8 different times. We have 8 cases. So, again, kudos to him for keep bringing it up. And you're going to get fact-checked so hard it doesn't matter. So, Josh, continue. Sorry, I had to add that in.
Well, there's no issue that the media lies more about or just absolutely goes, no, I'm not going to believe it. Then absolutely abortion is the number one issue on that. No question at all. However, it's not the only one. So when during the debate, Donald Trump said Kamala Harris supports, quote, transgender operations on illegal aliens in prison. And here's the thing, the way the reporters are writing this up, like, this is crazy. And Time Magazine wrote a story about how it was false. His statement was a lie, right? Yeah. And then, ruh-roh, Raggy, guess what happened? Time Magazine had to issue a correction. This is their correction. The original version of this story, mischaracterized as false, Donald Trump's statement accusing Kamala Harris of supporting transgender operations on illegal aliens in prison. As a presidential candidate in 2019, Harris filled out a questionnaire saying she supported taxpayer-funded gender transition treatment for detained immigrants.
Right here.
This is the point I keep trying to say. These positions are so radical that the normal reporters like, well, this is just Trump baiting the voters into thinking this person believes something that's not true. There's no way on earth that the Democratic presidential candidate would honestly have ever supported paying taxpayer money for gender transition for someone who came into this country illegally and is detained. It's like, yeah, no, she believes it. She supports it.
Josh,
she didn't just write it in a questionnaire. It's on videotape.
Yeah.
She was talking with this transgender. That's not it. That's not only, they don't just do it on abortion. They're doing that transgender stuff, but it's not just that. People need to realize the other thing that's going on. Okay. So I want to give a shout out to Muse on Twitter, AMUSE. In that he goes, in that 3-on-1 debate, the ABC News moderators used misleading crime data from the FBI to fact check Donald Trump. All right, guys in the chat, everyone listen, buckle up. Here's what's going down. The reality is Trump, as he usually is, was right. Crime is not down. It's way up. Kamala Harris and her willing accomplices in the mainstream media would have you believe that violent crime in America is at a 50-year low, a narrative that was eagerly parroted by the so-called fact checkers at ABC News. The reality is far from what they claim. The only thing at a 50-year low is the integrity of violent crime data. Get this, guys. Less than a year after taking office, the Biden-Harris administration had the FBI dismantle the long-standing crime reporting system, replacing it in 2021 with a new woke system that was optional for state and local law enforcement authorities to use. As a result, at least 6,000 law enforcement agencies are not providing data to the FBI, meaning that 25% of the country's crime data is not captured by the FBI. This is deliberately underreporting, and it's skewing the statistics. It's creating a falsely optimistic picture of public safety. Americans have a sense that crime is going up, and they're right. And ABC News trying to fact check Trump and saying, no, you're wrong. Crime stats say it's lower. It's baloney.
Tom, I think
gaslighting.
Didn't you share a meme? It was one person saying, "Hey, I can't afford groceries," and then it was a reporter saying, "Source?" ?
Right, that's what they always do.
It's perfect.
I'm your source, you idiot. I'm broke.
So, Josh, you actually missed my favorite part of the transgender reassignment surgeries to detain migrants. If you look at the pledge that she took, oh, wrong one. If you look at the pledge, right above the pledge to say that she would fund gender care and transition surgeries for detained migrants, she says she pledges to end immigrant detention. So she's against detention, but if they are detained, she's for them getting gender reassignments. It's like, I saw someone online say this too. It almost suffers from, I think it was Mary Kate Hammer, who's a beast. It suffers from a Chappaquiddick problem that it almost sounds so outrageous that it can't be true. Right. And it's almost hard for people to take in stuff when it's so crazy like this and actually believe it. They just get bombarded with stuff that almost sounds like a conspiracy theory, but it's true. And we had a conversation earlier, right before the show, really, about the big fact check. The big fact check that I'm going to refer to here is the cats and dogs claim, okay? So Trump, of course, he went up there and he said they're eating cats, they're eating dogs, talking about Springfield, Ohio. And I think as well-meaning Catholics, we want to appeal to our better nature. And so we've had some internal debates. Is this a good line of reasoning? This is effective line of reasoning. And funny enough, I mean, I'm going to screen share here. Tim Waltz actually got chants going of we're not eating cats. So if you're wondering about the effectiveness of the rhetoric, I mean, it's everywhere right now. And some people internally, and I've seen Catholics talk about it online, are saying this isn't effective. The argument we're having of whether or not it's effective,
or that it's unseemly.
It's unseemly. I think that's what it comes down to. But an effectiveness argument started.
It's kind of crazy though, because you could, some of these people, some conservatives that say it's unseemly to talk about immigrants eating cats, they don't have problems with saying, well, if you look at the data, these immigrants are creating more crime. They're raping people and all that kind of stuff. That's obviously, the fact that you're saying immigrants are coming to this country and they're committing, they're robbing, stores and they're raping our women. That obviously sounds much more alarmist than eating cats. It's that the idea, if you're saying, well, they might be eating cats or doing this other stuff, it makes it seem unseemly, like you're saying they're the other. And it's like, well, there is an element of this. I mean, in this country, and you see the gaslighting on internet. It's like, well, I thought you guys on the right supported guns and hunting and all that culture. And here's a Haitian, and he's hunting geese. And why do you have a problem with that? It's like, listen, I don't have a problem with them hunting geese. I mean, that's fine, whatever. The whole point was that you don't go to the city park where kids are playing and shoot at a goose and then grab it and then go home. And first of all, when you hunt, you need to hunt during the season. You don't just get to hunt deer or game whenever you want to. You have to do it when it's in the right season. And yeah, walking down the street in a cul-de-sac with a goose hanging around your, I mean, that's just, it's a little bizarre. The question is, what culture are they bringing? Are they assimilating into their country? Are they learning our ways? Or are they doing something that just seems rather foreign? But again, let's have that conversation. I don't think we should be ashamed to have conversations about this. Again, I bring up the point where, why is it that when we have discussions about this, it's immediately like, oh, we can't say this, we can't do that. It's like, I'm sick and tired. We've had way too much of this the last couple of decades where it's like, you don't have permission to talk that, naughty you. It's like, well, wait a minute now. Like, if we want to talk about solidarity and making sure things are good for our fellow neighbor, let's talk about social cohesion and letting 20,000 people that are from a very poor country that have very crazy customs. And from what that lady said who testified at the city council, they don't treat their women that respectfully at all. Like, let's have this talk. Is it good for the culture of Springfield, Ohio to have 20,000 people dumped in their laps?
And it was kind of like the three of us against others on the chat. So I don't know if we're being fair to our colleagues.
Yeah, but maybe we need to get Brian on here.
They can get their own podcast.
That's right.
Except sometimes we need those extreme stories sometimes to bring others into the conversation. Because I've seen so much, and I brought up an example of when I worked in the fiscal world, in the tax world, of there could be billions wasted at the Pentagon, but all anybody cares about is Boeing charged $400 for a hammer. And that's when all the news started paying attention to the story. And I used to get so frustrated. Well, I still get frustrated on Capitol Hill. I could get no support for legislation to save babies, be it at 16 weeks, be it at birth, be it when it's born alive or whatever. It's very hard to get support. But if I had a bill to protect puppies, members of Congress are going to be all over it.
Yeah, so passed by acclamation overnight, 24 hours.
Right. Sometimes you have to talk about these extreme parts that unfortunately it looks like is true, or it's just a matter nobody really knows if it's not, because these reporters are just relying on one
city councilor,
Democratic city politician, and they're not going to Springfield and checking out themselves. Because if they did, they'd have to report on all this other stuff we're talking about.
Right. And could we think about how ridiculous it is that they would make one call to the city councilor that their entire job is to make the city look good? Do you really think they're going to be digging in or giving an honest read? So that's why I think the one thing that's lost in all this is the fact that it is brought up is going to be a net positive, because this brings attention. It brings in actual reporters. It brings in social media people to go in and actually ask the residents what's going on. And after you ask the residents what's going on, you get to the bottom of it. The U.S. government has used our tax money to bring in thousands of Haitians into the country under temporary protected status, give them thousands of dollars, raising rent on the Americans there so that they can't afford rent in their own town. And they can't get benefits. They can't get health care. I mean, it's a nightmare. But I think the claim itself isn't unreasonable, because there are reports of that. And if you do ask people, that's what they're saying. So now the question is, well, we need to go and investigate for ourselves. And I think the broader point on Trump's debate style, I think there was general disappointment because it felt like he could have landed a knockout blow. It really did. And he could have. I believe that. He didn't. He was 3v1 against moderators. And there actually is a whistleblower coming out that she had the questions beforehand, which doesn't surprise me at all. But the point here is that I think a critical thinker observing this debate sees these, and they have the same experience we talked about with that guy on abortion. This is so outrageous, I need to look into it. Or they observe the moderator. Why are they fact checking Trump 8 times and not fact checking her at all? And then they look into it and they have their own JD Vance moment where maybe at first they thought Trump was crazy, and then they start investigating some of the claims because it is so outrageous. And then they come to see, oh, they lied about that. What else are they lying about? So I see it as an overall net win, because Trump has to basically debate in an impossible situation in a 3v1 with the fact checkers and everything going on live. But he always ends up winning out at the end. He has every time.
So we got a question in the chat from Jan. What do you know about Kamala's earrings being audio hearing aids? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. The thing is, she had no record to brag about, because everything has gone wrong for the Biden-Harris administration for the last 3.5 years. She's trying to run as a Republican. She talks about how she owns guns. She talks about border security. That tells you that she's petrified, and that, there was just a report, actually, that pre-debate polling that said that the Democrats were freaked out. They're like, well, we're doing a little bit better in North Carolina than we thought. Pennsylvania and Arizona are looking kind of tough, but we kind of have a chance. And it was amazing concession from people, people that from the Harris campaign. And it's like, if they won all the states they were bragging about and didn't win the ones that they were worried about, they're going to get to 260 some votes, 269 votes. They are not in a great position right now. They're calling the idea of winning Pennsylvania pretty rough, and Arizona pretty rough. And it's like, how do you get to 270 if you can't win Pennsylvania? For a Democrat, that's really hard. And I just want to remind people, this is not 1980, okay? 1980, Reagan and Carter were very close in the polls, and then it goes right to that debate, and he clobbered them. And everyone was like, this guy sounds reasonable, and he won, okay? That's not the environment we live in today. The fact is, George W. Bush lost his first debate, and he got elected, okay? Barack Obama, in fact, in 2012, lost his first debate, and he got elected. Donald Trump in 2016 lost his first debate, and won the election anyway. So this idea that, if I'm just speaking objectively, did he make some good points? Yes. Did Kamala Harris have a hard record to sell? Yes. Overall, do I give him people I think I think Trump won. I mean, so what? Yeah, sure you did. I think Kamala had maybe a slight edge, but my greater point is it's not going to matter enough. I mean, like Mitt Romney won that first debate. People say he might have a chance to win. I go, he might. I mean, I tell my friends like, well, you think he's going to win, right? I'm like, I mean, he could.
Yeah.
But probably not.
Yeah.
And so I think he had a tougher time winning in 2012 than Harris does now, but Harris still has a very tough thing to go. The fundamentals of this race are such that she's having to defend a wide open border where millions of people have poured across. Inflation is roaring. Now it's kind of chilled out a little bit, but people, every time they go to the grocery store, they're feeling the sting. So I do think that Kamala Harris is freaked out.
Source?
Yeah, my source is my receipts from going to Walmart.
Just on the Kamala Harris earring thing, I do believe she's hearing voices in her head. I don't think they're coming from her earrings, though.
Tom, I knew you were going to say that.
And to Josh's point, it's a shame because I love the theater of debates. However, I wouldn't be surprised if this is the last presidential election where we even have debates. Because the only time they're effective is when you flub up so bad, like Joe Biden did, that you have to actually drop out.
I would make a slight amendment to that. I think it's going to be the universally accepted that let's have a debate when only the partisans watch. Let's have it in, early September. And by the time the election rolls around, it'll be 7 to 8 weeks afterwards. Like the idea that people are going to be so influenced by this debate that these guys just had come election day. I think it's, unless there's a knockout blow comment, chances are debates move the needle for about 3 days and then something else comes by and it's forgotten.
If primary debates, I think are still effective.
Yeah. If I could though, Tom, on that point, I saw remember the Tucker Carlson Iowa interviews that he did with the primary candidates?
Yes.
I actually thought that was much more informative, much more interesting, and Tucker actually did hold feet to the fire on stuff. And again, we're talking about two different things because it's primary and general election.
He torched that one governor of Arkansas. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Not the current one, but the former one, yeah.
Because, and maybe this
Governor
is the
Walmart.
problem in general with general election stuff, it's stuff that actually matters to people within the party. You need to have someone who understands the things that matters to even ask them. So if you even think about the questions that were brought up by the ABC moderators, quote unquote, none of that really mattered to, Trump's audience. It was very much Kamala's audience or whatever ABC thought, I guess. So it'll be interesting to see where debates go. I just think it's going to be impossible to have another Kamala Harris level candidate for either party where she literally cannot go on podcasts. I even saw JD Vance just went on the All In podcast. I've talked about it, but I was just laughing to myself thinking of Kamala Harris going on that show. There's an open invite. There's no way she does it. She's completely incapable of answering the questions or seeming calm or seeming competent. So I see the future of the Democrats has to be, a Gretchen Whitmer or a Gavin Newsom, because those guys can talk. Both of them can talk. Both of them can. You would just have to be in this new era of campaign.
I hope that's the direction it goes. My fear is it might go in the other direction, and COVID hurt us on this, is where they run from their basement type of thing. And the media just, because we're calling out Kamala Harris, the media's not.
Right.
There's some outliers who are just who complained that she didn't have a policy page and things like that. But the media is just as happy to be her voice in the public square.
To that extent, though, I would say, Tom, the polling that the New York Times Siena poll that came out, last week, it did show that independent voters that, each of the campaigns need, they were frustrated that Kamala Harris wasn't more forthcoming with her ideas, and that did cost her support. So, the media might not care, but the voters do. And it did show that they, in fact, wanted to hear more from her and didn't get it. So that sugar high honeymoon that I talked about, and then there was an opportunity, if she would have thrown a few tangible things that she would be different than Biden or whatever, that could have said to voters, okay, this is a positive vision, or this is a reason why I need to support her. she had that opportunity to kind of keep some of those people, but instead she said nothing. She gave no interviews, and then that sugar high gets over, and then her numbers are back down to normal. So she might still have like a 1 or 2 point lead in some national polls. But the fact is, if she's leading by 1 or 2 points nationally, that means she's running up the score in California and in New York. And that means in the swing states, she's not doing as well. That's why, like I said at the beginning of this thing, there was the article, it was in CNN, and they say at a leadership retreat for top aides in Washington last week, Jen O'Malley Dillon, the campaign chair hired by Joe Biden and retained by Kamala Harris, ticked through the battleground states and warned them the vice president still did not have any one sure path to 270 votes. Okay, so let me explain why it gets into in this article. Pennsylvania looks rough by their own admission, though very possible by their internal numbers. North Carolina, disappointing Democrats every election for the last 15 years, is looking better to them this time around than Arizona. Well, just that Arizona look, that doesn't sound very confident. Like, okay, North Carolina is better than Arizona. That sounds like Arizona's just way out of reach then. So if Arizona's out of reach and Pennsylvania's a stretch, how do you get there? Biden won Nevada, both those states, obviously, last time. Nevada and Georgia both seem possible. How confident does that sound? The Kamala campaign is like, seem possible. Though depending on the poll, can take a lot of squinting, the reporter adds.
But Josh, what does all this say to you? If you could just wrap it in a bow.
What I'm trying to get at is that I've talked to a number of conservatives who are like upset at the media adulation of Harris, right?
Right.
And because we had like 4 months of Trump dominating the polls, right? And then Biden drops out, they put Kamala in there, and then you get this 3-week media blitz, you know, the glow, the vibes, all that stuff, right? And everyone's like, rah. And so then conservatives start to get freaked out, like, wait a minute, are we going to lose this because of this? And she's not having to do any interviews or anything. And they start freaking out, right? The conservatives. I'm like, okay, this is a sugar high. When this is over, there's still 5 weeks left, 6 weeks left of this campaign. And she has to actually address these things to the camp. She has to tell the voters what she stands for. She doesn't have the talent of like Barack Obama to just kind of, talk her way out of this. She's just not that, she's not that qualified. So the fundamentals of this race are the economy is horrible. Inflation was wreaking havoc on people, millions of illegals causing, all sorts of problems. The fundamentals of this race are Trump would have to colossally screw up to lose this, because I keep telling people, just look, the polls are interesting, but they're a snapshot and they're never concrete proof. And you try your best to figure them out, but think about the fundamentals of the race here, okay? Trump won narrowly in 2016 when everyone thought he probably wasn't going to win, right? Then when the actual votes were counted in 2020, let's assume there was no fraud. I'm not trying to get into that right now. It was super close, right? A sliver in Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin. So the question you have to ask yourselves is, can Trump improve on that sliver? Can he just do just a little bit better against Harris than he did it against Biden in Georgia, Arizona, and Wisconsin? Obviously, I think he can do that. And in fact, I think he's going to win. I mean, that's why I keep trying to, like, the doom and gloom I don't get. Like, yes, we still have to work hard and get out there, because you know what? Even if Trump wins, which I think he will, we need every Catholic to get out there and vote. Why? Because the Senate races matter too.
Right.
I mean, if we lose the Senate, we don't have the Senate right now, but if Kamala actually did win and we don't have the Senate, then we are lights out. Yeah. So we need to get out there. There's a lot of Catholics in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. You all have Senate races too.
Can I ask
the people that are supporting the current agenda?
Because that's something that's getting missed.
Obviously, there's abortion amendments. We need everyone to vote.
Right. There's something that's getting missed there. There's so much attention on the presidential race, we're forgetting about the Senate almost. And there's a lot of very winnable seats up for grabs, especially I think in places like Montana. You just said lights out if this doesn't happen, right? So Tom, could you just give tangible examples of Kamala Harris wins the presidency and Democrats win the Senate? What are some things that are kind of on the table here?
One, I mean, they vowed to get rid of the Senate filibuster, and we'll no longer have the backstop of, say, Joe Manchin, a Democrat who opposed getting rid of the filibuster, or the Kristen Sinema from Arizona, who also opposed getting rid of this filibuster. And what this means is legislatively, they would not only codify Roe v. Wade, they would go beyond. They do like what California is doing, that if you speak out against, they have legislation that is if you're a pro-lifer in Missouri and you speak out against abortion, you would go to jail under this legislation. If you're a state legislator and you introduce a bill to say parental rights for abortion, you could be investigated by the FBI and possibly go to jail. And just imagine that on energy, on economic issues, your groceries will go up. It would be dogs and cats living together, total chaos. It's just even beyond even thinking about, and to Josh's point as well, in every single state, the Republican Senate candidate is running behind Donald Trump, in every single state, including like in Indiana. And I would hate to jinx it, except Jim Banks is running against a Democratic candidate who the Democratic Party hates. They're not giving her any money or anything like that. Jim Banks would probably have to commit a couple of crimes, not just one, but a couple of crimes to actually lose these states. But he's still trailing behind Donald Trump. In Montana, the candidate, who is it, Tim Sheehy, he was trailing behind a little bit behind his opponent. Donald Trump came and did a rally specifically to help out Tim Sheehy, and all of a sudden Tim Sheehy's numbers went up. So what I would feel more comfortable, I wish Donald Trump was a little more ahead in a lot of these battleground states, and he probably is, but we're not getting the full story. You have to run full speed in these states, because I would love for him to go to certain states and to help out the Senate candidates there.
Yeah. Well,
absolutely. And we got to get more competitive there. And if he goes to Michigan and says, vote for Rogers, vote for Rogers. If he goes to Pennsylvania, say, vote for McCormick, vote for McCormick, get that out there, and do that in Wisconsin too. And get out there and, you may not win all of them, but if you could pick up an extra one or two up, that makes such a difference. Why does this matter? Well, I mean, again, I tell people like this: we had 55 Republicans in the Senate back in 2006 when we got Sam Alito confirmed to the Supreme Court. But by the time, Coney Barrett's around, we only have a month before the before the election, and we had 52 seats or 53 seats or whatever. It wasn't as big of a margin, because we have these states. This is one of the things. Obviously, the internet has got a lot of pros and cons. Okay, and one of the we talk about the cons. It's not good to have, 13-year-old girls using Instagram because it's horrible. I agree with that. I get all that. Pornography explosion. I get all that. Let me just talk about one good thing about the internet, though. I love. It's a lot harder for charlatans in red states to try to hoodwink their voters. So this, Mary Landrieu out of Louisiana, pro-abort Catholic, and then all of a sudden the voters are like, wait, what? And the internet helps share that. So now she's no longer the senator from Louisiana. And it takes a while for some of these people to get knocked out. But now we got John Tester in Montana. Let's get him out of there. He's a pro-abort guy, and he thinks, oh, well, I can wear a bolo tie and drive a pickup truck, and you'll think I'm one of you. Yeah. Screw you. You're a communist. Get the heck out of there.
It's the, what was that show, Yellowstone? The Yellowstone memes that go around of, well, I just think a woman should have the right to choose. Or don't really like you. Okay, at this point, I think we got a new section here, okay? FAQ Friday. I want to offer the opportunity for you guys to ask what you want to hear from us. At this point, throw them in the chat. Happy to answer them. There's a couple questions that got over email that are more tailored to Erica. So we're going to wait until Erica comes back for those. So if you have questions for me, Josh,
hey, I'm filling in for Erica. Should I be answering those questions?
You got to put on your Erica hat. No, we're going to actually wait for real Erica. We believe in real women on this podcast. So, but before we talk about that, I wanted to just go into something kind of fun. So I saw that SpaceX yesterday pulled off the first commercial spacewalk. which is pretty awesome. I don't know why it's not loading here. Let's see. Bam. Tech billionaire pulls off first private spacewalk high above Earth. Look at him there. Crazy. Pulled it off. Now, this, of course, is all going on as there's 2 Boeing astronauts that Boeing stranded up in the space station. We're going to be there until February. Funny enough, the contract was taken from Boeing and given to SpaceX after you see things like this. But yeah, we had 2, I think one was like a billionaire and another was, they weren't astronauts per se. They just went up there. The footage is really cool. And that just starts a general conversation here. If you had the opportunity to go to space, would you do it? Yes or no?
Well, Josh is the only billionaire in this chat, so
That's true. Off that loop money.
I just think it's wonderful, Tom, that you think I'm out of this world.
It's true.
it's,
So
I don't know how to.
I need a hard yes or no on space for both of you. Are you getting in the SpaceX spacewalk suit and exploring the stars?
I just got back from a great tour of 4 great states: North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Montana,
Wyoming.
And one thing I learned was, as I get older, my vertigo is increasing, where I'm driving like in 1,000-foot falls on the other side of me. I cannot imagine being about 20,000 feet up in the air. So I'm going to have to pass on this one.
I mean, this footage is insane.
I do think it was kind of cool that they brought Captain Kirk up into space. You know, he's 90 years old, and it wasn't SpaceX. It was the Amazon dude's guy. He brought him up there. I thought that was kind of cool. You know, William Shatner gets to experience outer space. I thought that was kind of cool.
So would you, Josh?
Would I go? I mean, that's not even the question for me. The first question would be like, would I do like skydiving, you know, or something like that? My brother's done it. You know, he was in the Army. He did it. You know, he's done several jumps. He's certified on that. And I thought to myself, that'd be kind of cool thing, but I would not do something that risky, even though I know they could do it safe and stuff like that, until my kids were all adults. You know what I'm saying? Like if I'm 70, oh, what the heck, let's go. You know, then they lose grandpa at 70, like who cares? But I'm not going to do it while I still have like a grade school children at home.
Yeah, it's true.
I haven't thought about like actually going out into outer space or whatever. I mean, it's just but it's not even within the grasp of reality. There's no way to be able to afford that. But if they said, hey, free ticket, I'm like, yeah, that'd be kind of cool.
I wouldn't put it past.
I'd dig that.
I would not put it past Elon Musk for doing a Willy Wonka golden ticket-esque competition and sending someone up.
That'd be funny, wouldn't it?
The footage from this is breathtaking. I agree with you. Isn't there a movie? There's a movie called The Bucket List, right? It's Morgan Freeman, and basically they're all old and they're trying to do all those things. I like that take. I have a
boomer movie.
Yeah.
Surprised you know about it.
Yeah, I've never seen it. I just know the concept. I get that. I like the concept of once you're old and it doesn't matter, then you take some more risks. I even think in my personal life now, there's activities, for example, dirt biking. I did it for my bachelor party because I just had always wanted to do it as bucket list. And I know I left that saying that was really fun. If I ever owned a dirt bike, I would probably kill myself. Like I would injure myself in a way that would be so damaging. And getting hurt as an adult is way less fun because then you have to go rehab it. You got to pay for all the insurance. Like as a kid, whatever, man, parents are doing it. You get a cast, your friends can sign it. I got a young kid now. I can't be getting like breaking my tibia or whatever. So that's kind of how I feel about space for the astronauts, but probably not for me. Cool footage though. Thought that'd be a fun Friday example.
But I do like sci-fi. I do. I enjoy it.
Okay. What else we got today? We got the poll. The poll has 34 votes. Where are we at? We got a lot of no's. 79% vote no. I feel you guys on that. Although we got to go get these NASA astronauts, right? That is crazy. They're still up there. What a nightmare scenario.
And I didn't read it because it's a man and a woman. Are they married or anything? Or
I don't know.
Because this sounds like a Hallmark movie.
I thought it was
like
two men. Maybe
no, I think it's a man and a woman.
It is a man and a woman.
Except like stranded in space. They hate each other, but they bond over Tang.
Maybe this is all just a big.
Sounds like a pilot to a new show.
Yeah, this is just a new Netflix.
Off the ground.
New Netflix reality series. Dude, that's so funny. SpaceX. Yes, they're having SpaceX program. It's Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams. So I don't think they're married.
Wow,
But they're just chilling up there. And yeah, Boeing not looking great right now. They have a big strike going on. I think that happened yesterday. So not ideal.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, hopefully they're not opening any doors up there if they're Boeing doors.
What the dislike of Tang. Okay, so just some general questions I have here. One, why doesn't the Loopcast move to Rumble? Rumble is a tremendous pain in the butt to stream to. I know we probably should. We re-upload everything to Rumble, but the way that their streaming platform works, it's not very friendly to streaming anywhere outside of Rumble, and it doesn't have the same organic discoverability that a YouTube does. So it's much easier for us to reach a larger audience on YouTube. I think the next step, honestly, is streaming to X. So that's just a thing I just need to look into more and figure out how to do it mechanically, because I'm not really a tech guy. Surprise, surprise. As you guys see, something happens to the internet every other episode. But that is the reason we're not on Rumble. We do re-upload everything on Rumble, so you can go watch it there if you like. I got someone was wondering about the validity of the whistleblower claim. I think this is the ABC one. I think that myself, we kind of talked about this with the earrings. It's almost like. Can I answer
this one? I think,
yeah, go
again,
for it.
I just feel like it's the same thing with the earrings. It's like, I think a lot of people in our friends in the audience are looking at this and just feels like she's a cheat code. It's like, let me tell you something. Her performance could have been exactly the same as it was with no earrings, without knowing any questions beforehand, because she actually prepped for 5 or 6 days. And what kind of questions are they going to ask? They're going to ask an abortion question. What she did is memorize 2-minute answers. And so when it came up, here's her reason why the Biden economy is great. Here's the reason why abortion is so important. Here's the it didn't take her that much to rehearse for this. And my point is that Trump usually is good shooting from the hip, but he needs a little prep time, and he didn't prep. So if he would have, it would have done better.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, he needs to find that balance, because I hear from some people who've worked for him and currently work for him, because you don't want to flood any candidate with pages and books and binders full of data, because then they remember nothing. He needs to find that sweet spot where they hit him with those talking points and all, because I do think it was more that Kamala Harris prepared more. And that's the reason we saw what happened there. I did hear that the ABC whistleblower apparently is going paddleboarding with Barack Obama. So I don't know if we'll hear any more from them after.
Do you also cook any meals over there? Jeez, man. Tom on a heater today.
For God's sake.
We had someone ask, are anyone going to see Am I a Racist? We actually are going to see Am I a Racist as a full office next week. So I'll be ready for the Wednesday show. I'll have my full thoughts on the new Borat, the new right-wing Borat, Josh, Matt Walsh. So I'm looking forward to that. I think it's going to be phenomenal.
I saw this quote that I did want to share. It went kind of viral from the guy on Twitter called Fisher King 64.
Oh, yeah, he's a stud.
And Elon Musk actually retweeted it. And he said, the trouble with voting for Kamala Harris is that she's fundamentally trivial and will not actually be in charge. Her debate performance beat expectations, but at root, it was a series of well-rehearsed 90-second speeches somebody else wrote. That is what she would be as president of the United States. An actress doing the bidding of whoever's in charge now while Biden hangs out on the beach. That's what we would get. So,
that reminds me of one of my favorite debate clips of all time. It was when Chris Christie said Marco Rubio is the consummate politician. He can just memorize 30-second sound bites and nothing else. And watch, he's going to say it again. And then he kept repeating the same 30-second soundbite over and over and over again. It was one of the worst meltdowns in debates I've ever seen. And I like Marco Rubio. I've had him on the
Super
podcast.
Fan of Rubio.
We like Rubio.
That was not helpful.
That was the end of his campaign.
Correct.
Yeah, that was the end of his campaign, though. And Chris Christie called him. And I actually don't really like Chris Christie. But again,
I really don't like Chris Christie.
If you are just looking at debate performances, again, because they're fun, it's a drama to them. that was the absolute end nail in the coffin of that campaign, because it was exactly what he said. And I feel like that does apply to Kamala Harris, no question. Okay, last FAQ. Josh, who's your favorite child?
Who's my favorite what?
Child.
Oh, my kids. Well, actually, I just dropped off my eldest, Annie, at the University of Mary. And then I came back home. We get home and like, no, there's no Annie anymore. I said, okay, now who's going to compete to be Dad's favorite now? And they all laughed, So it's like, we'll see. Johnny looks like he's in the running right now, but,
So whoever is the next one to leave.
Yeah, exactly. I think I saw, I think it was Amon-Ra St. Brown's, a wide receiver for the Lions. His dad was Mr. Olympia back in the day, John Brown. And he said his ranking for favorite child changes. Like, he's like, oh, this person is my favorite child now, but the rankings can always change. Someone could really step up their games. Like, that is an interesting way to look at who your favorite child is. Okay, we slide in the Twilight Zone now on this wonderful Friday. Josh, you're up first. What do you got?
I thought this was a very telling interview that George W. Bush did recently. It's mentioned in David Rubenstein's new book on populism. And George W. Bush said, I listened to Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson and Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke and spent your money to bail out the guys who created the instruments in the first place, which is an absolute political disaster. You wonder why populism is on the rise, Bush said. It starts with taking taxpayer money and giving it to the powerful. It really irritated a lot of Americans, and they haven't gotten over it yet. That's just part of it. There's a lot of other reasons why. But we've had candidates say, you're mad, I'm going to make you madder, as opposed to you're mad and I've got solutions to make you less mad. We're kind of in the matter stage where people are exploiting the anger as opposed to dealing with it like leaders should.
Interesting.
So I found that fascinating because Bush, tripping on my words here. I feel like George W. Bush was at least doing more than any other establishment Republican, at least explaining the rationale why people supported Trump. Okay. It was one of many reasons why Trump is being supported, but it's like, it was an abysmal failure. It was a political failure. It was a policy failure to bail out all these large corporations, take care of Goldman Sachs, screw the taxpayer, that it's helpful. And I would echo that because this is the point for example, contrast that with, we had the Iraq war and what happened, nothing. Right? He waited till after the election to fire Rumsfeld. He bailed out these huge companies, right? We've had Obamacare be a total disaster. What happens? Nothing. Afghanistan, total disaster. What happens? Nothing. Just think back to the Civil War, right? Lincoln had McDowell as his general to lead the army. He fires him. Then he brings in McClellan, fires him. Brings in Pope, gets rid of him. Brings in McClellan again, fires him. Brings in Burnside, gets rid of him. Brings in Hooker, gets rid of him. Brings in Meade, fires. Meade actually did pretty good. He was great at Gettysburg, but he didn't exploit the victory. So gone. Finally brings in Grant. And what does Lincoln say about Grant? I love him. He's a fighter. And when people were turning on Grant, he goes, I can't let go of him. He fights. And Grant grinds out a victory. He takes it to the Army of Northern Virginia and he wins. Here's the point, though. We don't fire people anymore. We don't do it. We have a federal government where there's so many people who are incompetent. Every general who botched Afghanistan, they still have a job. And is anyone in the Secret Service fired? I mean, we had an attempted assassination of a presidential candidate who there was no mention of that in the presidential debate. Crazy. But who's been fired? We don't fire people anymore. So Trump, that was one of the things I thought when he first ran, he should have went in, you're fired. He should lean into that more. Get rid of these dolts in the government that are screwing things up.
He did say that during the debate, that he fires people.
Yep. I know. I thought that was great. He needs to do more of that.
We could definitely use a little bit more of that. No question. All right, Tom, I see you have two options.
I'm going to go with I'm actually going to throw things to the wolves or whatever. I'm going to go with the business leaders for Kamala one, but I'm also going to have a little personal one at the end as well.
Sweet.
But Kamala Harris, and this, if I'm writing a book about the 2024 elections, it's got to be called the gaslight election. About like nothing is as it appears, especially if the media is the one telling you it. But she recently announced that she has 88 business leaders for Harris. And this was more than Joe Biden had in the past, or Hillary Clinton. She had like 60. But the big difference with Kamala Harris's list, of those 88, only one is actually a current business leader. All the others are retired and are no longer working.
Oh my gosh! Of course.
So, and the only one that does is Chobani Yogurt, is the only one with the current. And I think part of it is hopefully business leaders are waking up, and hopefully, especially after the whole Bud Light and now John Deere and everything else, Lowe's, the business leaders are waking up. Second, because I have the forum, I just wanted, what struck me out of the Twilight Zone yesterday was a former boss of mine, Jeannie Mancini, head of the March for Life, is stepping down for the March for Life after a dozen years. I'd known Jeannie for years prior. We both worked at Family Research Council together, and smart as a whip, very much in a policy, very much a thoughtful person who I was able to watch transform into a real leader. Every year in the beginning, she did not want to speak at the march because she's like, that's not me. They wanted to get a different speaker. But what she didn't see was how all the kids just responded to her when she spoke at the march. And it was just an honor to work for her. And the person filling her shoes, I'm looking forward to see how what she does as we go into what is a brand new era for the pro-life movement. And the pro-life movement definitely does need new blood, but a young woman, Jenny Lichter, who I also had the honor of working with at Family Research Council. She was one of the first friends I made there when I went there, because we were kind of bonded as kind of like the Catholics at this place. But daughter of Jared Bradley, the great Notre Dame professor, but accomplished in her own right. Worked in the Trump administration, was one of our movement's very close friends. So just job well done, and looking forward to the next 50 years.
Nice. The first Twilight Zone you brought up reminded me of the endorsement from the Bush people. And then you look deeper into it, and it's interns from McCain's campaign like 20 years ago. You're like, what? Great, you can have them. But even if it was relevant people, you can have them. But it wasn't even relevant people. And of course, and then I've seen this thrown around so many times. It was the 51 national security advisors, or what was the exact terminology of the people?
Intelligence officers and stuff
intelligence
like that.
officers. The 51 intelligence officers said the laptop's not real. Sure enough. I mean, it's a tale as old as time. Speaking of the intelligence community, I have... Look, I'm not gatekeeping podcasts here, guys. You know, we wouldn't even be here without podcasts. So this isn't an anti-podcast statement. It feels like it is a bit of a danger to society that anyone with a microphone can talk, but that's where we are. And it turns out the NSA is getting in the game. So the NSA has a podcast, and the quote is, the NSA's podcast will have you listening in on them this time.
Oh.
So, look, do I
Not
think...
a great tagline.
How the turns have tabled.
How the tails have turned. For those who don't know what the NSA is, the National Security Agency. And yes, they were exposed for spying on Americans after Edward Snowden leaked all that information. And let's just say I have 0% confidence that what they are going to be talking about in this podcast is anything close to the actual truth. It kind of reminds me of in Hard Knocks, when teams agree to have Hard Knocks come in, the HBO series, to their training camp. And I have no confidence that what they actually submit for people to watch is relevant or probably even true in a lot of cases. Great example would be the Chicago Bears having you believing that the Bears are going to have the greatest offense of all time after watching Hard Knocks and them being pitiful in the first week of the season. So yeah, I highly doubt real stuff's going to be coming out here. And I'm not gatekeeping podcasting, but I would not like to hear from the NSA, typically because they listen to me so much.
I myself welcome our NSA leaders and would not want to upset them in any way. I need to read this correctly. Not want to upset them in any way, and welcome them with open arms.
Yes, and shout out to the our FBI guys listening to the Loopcast every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, along with us all in the chat. Just like to give you a warm hello. So, and then someone asked,
one of these times we'll have to do it in Latin. Make sure they are listening.
Oh man. And then I guess I have a two for Merrick Garland got up yesterday and gave a stirring speech about how he believes that the Justice Department should be apolitical, and he is outraged. He is outraged that Donald Trump has suggested potentially firing people within the Justice Department because they're so apolitical and they'd have no bias at all. And I just could not help but give a belly laugh at that after labeling parents upset at their school boards domestic terrorists and refusing to rescind that, and also politically prosecuting the current Republican nominee for president.
Oh, and then as churches are burned and vandalized all across the country, him going,
Well, Josh, they were happening at night, in fairness. That's what he said.
Oh, right, at night.
So They were happening at night, which is kind of hard to see at night. So,
I mean,
to be fair,
this is the same, Keystone Cops, like, it's kind of a slope roof. I can't get on top of that roof. It's too sloped. Yeah.
I actually am looking forward to seeing. Josh knows the trumpet. I'm looking forward to seeing the findings from the investigation on the Secret Service thing, because I'm even seeing Democrats saying people are going to be shocked by what is seen here. And I get it, because the Secret Service protects both Democrats and Republicans. This isn't even a partisan thing. How can we possibly have people taking shots at our guys, at politicians? Everyone's upset about this. Like, you can't have that. So, yeah, we'll see. But thank you guys for joining for the Friday show. Definitely more laid back today. Appreciate you guys coming to hang out. If you want to help the program, you can email me, loopcast@catholicvote.org, with questions, thoughts, concerns, praise for Tom. Tom actually... McCluskey only accepts praise, so I don't send him anything negative. So if you want to send it to Tom, it's got to be positive.
This head grows.
Yes, the head grows. If you want to support us, become a champion. CatholicVote.org/champion. It's the only way we're able to do this. We're stay independent and do what we do. We appreciate that. Leave us reviews. You're listening to this afterwards. Go over to Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Leave us a nice little 5 stars. We appreciate that as well. But the best thing you can do, of course, is pray for us. Thank you guys for joining here live. And St. Thomas